What's up guys, now today I have some breaking news regarding an impending trade that could possibly send Chris Paul to several NBA teams, including the Los Angeles Lakers. Now before I get any further into this video, make sure that you guys like and subscribe for more information on the best of the best NBA players around the league. And make sure that you guys check the first link down below if you guys want any Nike, basketball accessories, or even my YouTube equipment. And for the first story of today, the LA Lakers, the Rockets, the Mavericks, the Clippers, and the Denver Nuggets are reportedly going after Andre Iguodala. Now Andre Iguodala is in the last year of his contract, and although his contract does seem somewhat overboard, it would be a great addition to any roster in the NBA. Now Andre Iguodala is reportedly supposed to make $17 million next season, and the LA Lakers have often been pushed towards the idea of going after an Andre Iguodala or any player that the Warriors really give up, because the LA Lakers did after all take Quinn Cook. But for $17 million in 1 year, I do not know if it's worth the LA Lakers assets, because they would after all have to give up players. And it's not as if they would have to give up players for Andre Iguodala, because the Memphis Grizzlies have said that they're only looking for a late first round pick to trade for Iggy. But the question is, how are they going to make more cap space for Andre Iguodala to fit onto the team? And that's where the true issue lies. The fact that Andre Iguodala's contract is worth $17 million for 1 year. And I mean, that's more than Danny Green is getting paid, that's more than Avery Bradley is getting paid, that's more than most of the role players on the LA Lakers are getting paid. Now although I do believe Andre Iguodala is a great player, I don't think that at this point in time he's worth $17 million, and I would love to see him on the Lakers roster, the Rockets roster, any true contender, because he deserves to be on a contender's roster. But the question is he worth that risk? I mean, is Andre Iguodala, being 36 years old at this point in time and somewhat injury prone and no longer in his prime, worth $17 million in 1 season? That's the true question that we have to analyze. Now, as I told you guys earlier today, Chris Paul was after all traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder for several draft picks amongst himself, as well as first round protected picks. Now most have said Westbrook and Harden is going to be an extremely interesting duo, and these two should light a flame in the West, because there's one of two options. Russell Westbrook and James Harden are either going to be horrible on the court together, or they're going to be amazing. And I feel like what's dependent upon either of these things happening is whether or not these players can set aside their egos and go 100% towards winning the goal. And that goal has always been winning an NBA championship. Now although everything is looking great for the Houston Rockets, the Oklahoma City Thunder is as of now in a rebuilding phase. And OKC actually released a press statement earlier today saying that they had no interest in playing Chris Paul, and if things go to plan, Chris Paul will not play a single game in an OKC jersey, because they'd rather have the young core that they've gotten from the Clippers expand and develop. And now is the time for OKC to decide the best course of action for their team, because it could either be building around Chris Paul and using him as the centerpiece, which they most likely don't want to do because they're in the rebuilding phase. And as I've said again, OKC has released a statement that they will be trading Chris Paul. Now a few of the teams Chris Paul has been mentioned to be traded to are the Minnesota Timberwolves alongside Karl-Anthony Towns, the Miami Heat alongside Jimmy Butler, and the Los Angeles Lakers alongside LeBron James. Now let me make this clear, the only possible way that the Los Angeles Lakers could trade for Chris Paul is if the Thunder buy out his contract. Now if this situation were to happen, Chris Paul going to the Lakers somewhat makes sense on different fronts. Now although the Los Angeles Lakers have recently announced that they plan on playing LeBron James at the point guard position, this is mainly because of the point guards that they have at the moment, being Rajon Rondo and Alex Caruso. Now Rajon Rondo is a terrific passer, but Alex Caruso doesn't really have that passing gene. And this is why LeBron James has moreover decided to take the point guard role for the Los Angeles Lakers, because he's realized that they don't really have a true starting point guard when it comes to passing. Now Chris Paul and LeBron James are the best of friends, and these two players actually spend their off seasons with each other all the time. And one of the funniest parts about this trade is the fact that Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook are actually pretty good friends as well. And even after all this this turmoil had occurred, James Harden and Chris Paul still had State Farm commercials to shoot. So the real question is, will James Harden and Chris Paul be shooting any more State Farm commercials? But let's get back to the main topic at hand, and this is the fact that many have said and reported that LeBron James is actively recruiting Chris Paul and his agent to request a trade to the Los Angeles Lakers if they were to be bought out. Now don't get me wrong, I do feel like Chris Paul is a bit past his prime and it's not worth paying him all the money that he deserves. And by deserves, I mean the money that he's gotten off of his contract from the Houston Rockets. But the thing about it is, I feel like if anybody were to get along with Chris Paul, it would be LeBron James. Because even though both of these players have huge egos, they would set things aside to win the championship at the end of the day. And ultimately, that is what Chris Paul needs to solidify his career. Because many are saying that Chris Paul could just be another Carmelo Anthony. And two of the members out of the banana boat that LeBron James usually hangs out with during the summer don't have championships, being Carmelo Anthony and Chris Paul, while LeBron James and Dwayne Wade both have championships of their own. Now many are saying that Chris Paul to the Los Angeles Lakers could work pretty well, but the only problem is Chris Paul at this moment still has turmoil with Rajon Rondo as well as DeMarcus Cousins. And if you guys didn't know, yes, Chris Paul does have beef with DeMarcus Cousins as well. So I feel like if you were to add a Chris Paul to the team, you would have to trade one of these players, most likely being Rajon Rondo, the player who basically socked him during the middle of a game. Now another team that's been heavily scouting Chris Paul is the Miami Heat. Now before Chris Paul was traded to OKC, many speculations were going around that Russell Westbrook could possibly go to the Miami Heat and join Jimmy Butler out in Miami. Now many speculated that Westbrook had similar interests and he actually wanted to go down to Miami and team up with the Jimmy Butler. Now just because this isn't exactly how the events went down, that doesn't mean that the Miami Heat aren't still looking for a point guard actively, and many have said that they have been looking at a Chris Paul. And the thing is, Miami has all the leverage in the deal due to the fact that Chris Paul's contract is so bad. I mean, if Miami were to take Chris Paul from OKC, they'd be more doing OKC a favor and they could get draft picks out of that. And OKC has said that they're willing to trade some of their draft picks alongside Chris Paul to make the deal more favorable. Now we all know that the Miami Heat got Jimmy Butler via a sign and trade with the Philadelphia 76ers, but Miami has been actively looking for that other superstar, and it could very well be Chris Paul. Now at this point in Chris Paul's career, he can't be a superstar, but he can be a great player who gets you great stats if you play him efficiently. I mean, the conundrum with Chris Paul is that his usage rate can't be out of the ceiling. But then again, you have to give him the ball at times so that way he can feel as if he's the ball dominant point guard. Otherwise, he won't be comfortable on the team. Now, regardless if the Houston Rockets were to buy out Chris Paul or not, Miami Heat could still afford Chris Paul even if he were to go for that player option and make $40 million in his last year. And in all honesty, at this point, it's up to Chris Paul as to whether or not he wants to go to Miami. Because if he wants to go there, Miami has the assets to get him. And this could be a deal that we see going down as soon as today. And for the last team in the Chris Paul sweepstakes, the Minnesota Timberwolves have apparently thrown their hat in. Now this team is somewhat of a wild card given the fact that they haven't really had much playoff success, but the Minnesota Timberwolves are desperate for a point guard given the fact that they just lost Derrick Rose to the Detroit Pistons. Now the Timberwolves have drafted Jarrett Culver to round out their young core, but the addition of CP3 would bring a much needed veteran presence to really teach the players not just how to win but how to act on the court and how to really dedicate themselves, because that's one of the biggest problems that Jimmy Butler had with the Timberwolves organization. He felt as if he wanted to win a championship more than anyone else did, and as if they didn't really take it seriously. And I mean, we know for a fact that wasn't a problem with Joel Embiid, because we saw Joel Embiid crying tears after he lost in a Game 7 against Kawhi Leonard. Now many call Karl-Anthony Towns one of the best facilitators in the game, and alongside of Chris Paul, this wouldn't be a bad duo. But the question is, who would the Timberwolves have to trade? And the answer to that question is most likely Andrew Wiggins. And not only Andrew Wiggins, there would have to be other players that are thrown in or other picks, because Andrew Wiggins is another player with a horrendous contract. Because we do, after all, remember when Andrew Wiggins was said to be the next Kobe Bryant. I mean, just to reminisce, Andrew Wiggins was supposed to be the next Kobe Bryant, and Jabari Parker was supposed to be that second up, and they were supposed to have taken over the league for the next 10 years. And now I believe Jabari Parker may be playing for the Chicago Bulls. I mean, both of these players haven't lived up to expectations to the fullest, but Andrew Wiggins' career isn't like it's a complete bust. But nonetheless, trading a bad contract for a bad contract could actually help the Timberwolves in this case, and OKC could hope to build around an Andrew Wiggins who may actually develop into the player that he was meant to be. Now, by no means do I think Andrew Wiggins is going to be Kobe Bryant. Let me get that clear. No, he will not be Kobe Bryant, but who knows, maybe he will be a better player than he's been in the past few seasons for OKC. But where do you guys think would be the best destination for Chris Paul, and how do you think Chris Paul will play going forward into his next season? Let me know what you guys think down below. Thanks for watching, and I am out.